Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Let's go ahead and talk about The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. So since this is the last Secret Project book, let's go ahead and just quickly talk about my ranking for them. I think Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is my pretty easy number one. I definitely think I enjoyed that one the most. I really enjoyed the dynamic of Yumi and Painter and just really enjoyed that whole story. I know a lot of people say Sanderson can't do a really good love story, but I think that Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is a pretty decent try at it. Is it perfect? No. Are there a lot of issues? Yes. Is that probably a healthy, sustainable relationship in the real world? No. But good thing this is the Cosmere and there's magic, so it doesn't really matter if I think this would be a good relationship in real life. I think it works pretty well with the book. For the next two rankings, it's hard for me. I really think Tress and the Sunlit Man are pretty equal for me. When I first finished Sunlit, I had Sunlit ahead of Tress, and the more I think about it, the more they are just so even to me, and that maybe Tress is kind of sneaking up above Sunlit. The problem with me is, there are character readers, there are plot readers, and I think I'm a moments reader. There are moments in books that just stick out to me and stay with me more than anything else, and so that's kind of how I end up ranking books, and it really affects how I feel about a book, where there are big moments and like impact in a story. Those are the things that I really attach to. It's not always necessarily the characters themselves or plots, but like specific moments that happen in a book. And there are some really good ones in this book that kind of stuck with me. And I don't think Tress had those same level of moments compared to this. So I don't know. It's really hard for me to rank those two. Right now, I think I'm going to still leave Sunlit Man ahead of Tress, but it is a very close race. I will say, however, I do think this is the best looking of the Secret Projects. I really think the black sprayed edges really kind of just puts it above the other ones, though they all look amazing. But yeah, the black sprayed edges were like a really nice touch that I think just gives it that little extra. I don't know if the art is my favorite in this one. I think that would still be Yumi, but like the actual presentation of the book itself, I have to give it to Sunlit. And really quickly, this is what Sunlit Man is about, in case somehow you don't know. At least this is what I kind of got from it. We follow Nomad, who is on the run from a mysterious force. He finds himself on a planet where the sun is incredibly destructive, and the difference between life and death is staying ahead of the sunrise. And let's go ahead and just kind of talk about that aspect of the sun destroys the planet as it revolves around the sun. I found that to be really interesting, and that's kind of how the pacing of this book came into me and made me really think. And I heard somebody say this, I wish I could remember who so I could give them credit, but they said that this book reminded them of Mad Max. And I couldn't agree more. I think this book is really similar to that, at least with the pacing, how it's just kind of a go from beginning to end. And we just kind of run through this book. There's not a lot of slow moments. There's just enough to kind of breathe and kind of collect ourselves a little bit. But for the most part, we're just, straightforward ahead. It's really fast paced and action packed. And it's a little different for Sanderson for sure, because to me, I think of Sanderson as that slow build up to the Sanderlanche, and that last little bit of the book is just, explosive and crazy. I think of Oathbringer in particular when I think about the ending of a Sanderson book. That one is just crazy. But this book is kind of like that from the beginning. You're just kind of going the whole way through. And I enjoyed that change of pace, especially from Sanderson. I know pacing is a very personal thing, and sometimes people want something to be slower, faster, all of that. But for me, I really think the pacing in this book worked, because I don't think this is a story that needed a lot of fleshing out. This is very much, we are dealing with Nomad and the things that he is going through more than anything else. Yes, there's I don't mean to call the plot the secondary agenda here, but that's really what it felt like to me. The real thing here is Nomad coming to terms with things that have happened. And one issue that I did have with this book is we don't know exactly what's happened yet. And that's where I get the idea that this is like Stormlight Book 5.5 or 6.5, because we don't know exactly where in the timeline this is going to come up. I'm part of the group of people who thinks that Stormlight 5 is going to be incredibly dark, and a lot of characters are going to die, and it's going to be really sad. And to me, this book is kind of evidence for that. There's all kinds of things that are mentioned and talked about in this book that really make me lean towards really bad things are going to happen to the people we love in Stormlight. And, I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for that, but I do think that's a little strange to get this book before Stormlight 5. I'm glad we got it. I think it's an interesting world. The planet is strange and different and unique, and I always love that about Sanderson's world building. But in general, the plot and how I feel about the character Nomad himself, I think will be changed after we get some of the other stuff from Stormlight, which is fine. Like I said, he is like the central part of this, so it just feels weird that we don't have everything that I feel like we need to know. But I'll be interested to go back and see my thoughts about this book after we kind of get the timeline for him, and if it really changes how I feel about him or this book in general. So I mentioned how I'm a moments reader earlier in this video, and this book does have some very emotional moments between certain characters that I mean, those are the kind of things that I look for in my books, is those kind of moments, those kinds of interactions, those, whether it's, heroic, heartbreaking, disastrous, all of those kinds of things, those kinds of emotions are what I'm really looking for in a book. And there was a little bit of that here. Was it one of the best examples of it ever? No, but those moments stick with me so much. That's why things from Rhythm of War push that above like Oathbringer for me, which to me felt like was missing some of those. This book had a couple of them. Are they as great as they could be? No, but I still think they were pretty good. And one thing I do want to mention, I've obviously been talking a lot about other Cosmere books in this review, and that's because to me, this is probably the most Cosmere-centric book we have gotten yet. I thought the same thing with some of the other secret projects. Yumi, I thought was pretty Cosmere heavy, but this one in particular is like really, I feel like you need to have like your Cosmere knowledge a little bit down packed, especially with some of the bigger series. Do you need every single piece of the Cosmere to understand this one? No, but I do think it helps. I do think it is a good thing to have. And so if you're somebody who hasn't read a lot of the Cosmere, I would be very curious to see what you think about this book. As somebody who looks at the Cosmere in two different ways, one as like the individual series, and then as the Cosmere as a whole, kind of like the extended, Marvel universe, I find it really interesting to get this book and some of the implications I think it has. I watched the Shard cast from the 17th Shard, and some of the things they were talking about, I was like, oh wow, the implications in this book are just crazy. And I'm really looking forward to see how much of those things, get explored in future books and everything. So overall, I've been very positive about this book so far, and I do want to mention some of the negatives I did have with this. I really did think that some of the secondary characters in this book were lacking. Outside of Nomad himself, I think a lot of the other characters were pretty forgettable. They had their own struggle, but I think that the pacing of this book made it a little bit difficult to really settle down with them and care too much about them. Yes, I mean, you feel bad for them. They're going through something bad and, all this negativity with the villain, who's another negative that I'll get to. But in the end, I just never really got that connection. To me, it was just kind of Nomad, and then everybody else is such a far second down that they're there. There are three characters, and if you've read this, you know which three I'm talking about. I did find that whole dynamic to be very interesting, and obviously the magic of this world to be very interesting, but like the other characters here, they're just whatever to me. I feel like they barely even needed to be in the story. They barely were, in my opinion, and that's fine. I mentioned the main villain in this story. He's almost the secondary main villain, which is kind of funny in this book, but he's very much a return to a more classical villain where they're just kind of evil and power hungry for the sake of being evil and power hungry, which is fine. Actually, part of me kind of likes that, because I think at some point villains have become so, you're supposed to care about them. You're supposed to be sympathetic towards their cause a little bit. And sometimes I just need like a bad guy. Like, just let me hate a bad guy. And so while that was kind of nice, he is just very bland. And so he's interesting. I think he fits into this world and the things that are going on here. But like in general, he's not like anything that exciting. I would be a little bit interested to return to this world now after this book is over, to kind of see like the falling events and what happened and everything. But this is also a world that if we never return to, I don't think all that much is being lost. It is interesting, but for the most part, I think it is just kind of one of those Cosmere planets that will be out there that we'll probably get a random sentence reference to it at some point, and it really won't matter too much. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will end up being a really important planet. Anything's possible with Sanderson, and I could see how he could easily intertwine it into it being a more prevalent Cosmere location. But in general, I really think this was just an interesting story, and really just more of a, man, I really want Stormlight 5 and 6 and 7. And I just hope I'm still around when Sanderson is finishing Stormlight. But that is all I have for the Sunlit Man. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Did you like this? Was this your least favorite, most favorite of these secret projects? And as always, have a good one.